Who are you?
I am Daniel James,
And I'm
and
Kiara.
I'm nice to see you again, Shara. I I'm from the UK, from a small town called Huddersfield in the north of England, close to Manchester.
Nice.
And there's not much basketball played there.
Sorry,
I said there's not much basketball played there.
but how did you end up in basketball then?
Um, well, actually, funny story. So my father lives in the Caribbean in Grenada. And every year I would go and visit him during the summer holidays. And my step family, his wife, well, my stepsister, should I say, is 16 years older than me. And at the time, I was, I think, 11. And she was in Grenada visiting her mother, my dad's wife. And she brought her then boyfriend over, who is, he was a player of the Dallas Mavericks at the time. His name's Robert Pack, or Pac-Man. I think he came second in the 94 dunk competition.
Mhm.
And, you know, obviously, he needed to work out while he was out there and wanted to find a court. And there was one court available to practice on, an outdoor court in kind of the main town over there, St. George's. And he took me there and, shooting around, dunking, etc. And I'm like, I want to play this sport. I was playing football before and I liked it, but I hated it at the same time because obviously being in England, especially in the north of England, it gets absolutely freezing during the season, the winter months. And you're playing on hard grass and, sliding and tearing up your legs and stuff. Ball gets kicked against inside your leg is probably the worst pain you could experience. And so I'm like, yeah, indoor sport, exciting, athletic. This was for me. So that's how I got into basketball.
That's a nice story. And then I guess you kept playing for a while, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And
Played
now
in the North. Sorry?
and now you're a coach.
That's right. That's right. You know, um, Never thought I would be. Didn't really see it for myself. To be honest with you, I was never a super high IQ player, right? And so, I just relied on my athleticism at the time when I played. And so, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a story of like, you could do anything you put your mind to, in that sense. That's kind of how I feel when it comes to me as a coach. Every year I get more confident in my abilities, and I've always taken that kind of, mindset of like I'm learning the game, I'm learning from people. I was always open-minded in that sense. I always took feedback from people willingly, right? When they had things to say about my sessions or my coaching and things like that, right? I'd be good at kind of dissecting whether they're actually trying to be helpful with their feedback or they just want to criticize me. And I was able to, pick that up pretty quickly and just like kind of leave the criticism, but pick up on the things that could actually help me. And so yeah, I've had many different people offer their advice throughout my growth as a coach. Obviously I had, good early mentors, people who taught me the game, taught me the training aspect of things, right? I started in player development, through Chris Johnson and Phil Handy, met them through some pretty interesting circumstances in America and, became pretty close with them both and they were really, really instrumental in kind of helping me get going and started. And I'm very lucky because, you know, obviously the caliber of players that come into the gym are NBA players, top NBA players. So I was able to learn at the highest level, the intricacies of the game, the details, the focus on that, and that just gave me a really good platform to like move, forward in my coaching career.
That's great that you work with Phil Handy as well. You were with him at the camp in Athens, right? As well.
That's right. Yeah, your hometown.
Yeah.
I Yeah, I mean, I was invited by him to do that. Ultimately, I've been alongside him on many occasions, especially early on when I started out in 2016, 2017, when I'd go to the States, to LA specifically to, work alongside him and Chris. Just, being there kind of intern that plays defense and passes and rebounds, right? And you pick up a lot of the game from just being in that environment. And so,
For sure.
over time, there's lots of things that I've managed to experience alongside them, and Athens was one of them, which is great. I mean, the city was amazing. Obviously, it's always nice being alongside high level coaching and players, and obviously the environment at the Owaka Arena, Peace and Friendship Arena of Olympiacos was super cool. And so yeah, just add it to my experiences and be grateful for them, remember them, and try to learn from them. Even there was a big learning lesson for me, right? There was certain I actually remember in breaking down like what Chris Hines is gonna do, what AJ Diggs is gonna do, what Phil's gonna do, what I'm gonna do. Like in that breakdown, I remember you know I think it was Chris was gonna do the finishing. Um, AJ was ball handling and shooting, or Phil was ball handling and shooting, and we all had our separate things. And then my segment was drive and kick and relocation and stuff like that. And to be honest, you know, that was at the time, 2 years ago, it was kind of like my weaker point, trying to think about different movement stuff, multiple action sort of things. I was more so at the time focused on like the small group skill stuff, right? Like working on your finishing, like a little move to get to a shot or get to a spot. And I wasn't so much focused on like the whole aspect of the game, right? I didn't break down the game, or I didn't see the flaw in kind of like I didn't see the angles, I didn't see the space, I didn't see I just kind of like a trainer mindset where it's just like focus on this skill, right? And so that was a challenge for me. And I tried to do it, I tried to overcomplicate it. And he said, break it down, make it more simple, and gave got some advice on how players need to exit, timing things. And at the time I was quite disappointed in myself because I hold myself to a high standard, and that was something that was kind of like the Achilles heel of my training. And but what it did is it gave me an opportunity to learn, to be exposed, to have my ego pressed upon a little bit, and you know just grown from that, right? And so I've had my ego um, you know, kind of exposed or shot, if you want to say,
Yeah.
on many different occasions. When I was with the London Lions as well, completely new experience as an assistant coach, going from a skill development coach or trainer to that, was a whole new thing for me as well, and um, got a lot of lessons from that too. And so, in every lesson, I've managed to grow and consider what it is that I've been lacking in these areas. And I'm very grateful for those lessons in the end of the day because it's helped me become a better coach and even a better person, you know?
Of course, of course. So I just have one question just to understand you a little bit better based on what you said. So I guess in these camps, but also like growing up and coaching different clubs, you coach professional and like semi-professional or non-professional athletes, right? Um,
Yeah.
what do you like to coach better, let's say? How do you feel better? You feel better by starting from the bottom with an athlete or by coaching a professional athlete and, keep working with him on his current game?
Yeah. It's a good question. You know, I think each each level has a different kind of positive and negative. Um, you know, I obviously started at the highest level in some ways where, I got to learn from the way that the NBA players were getting trained and, got to learn from the players and, you know, got my own insights from that as well. And then last year, I've been working a lot with the youth, right? High level youth, some not so high level youth. And, what I realize is it's the passion of the game that I could share with somebody and that willingness to learn and be coached,
Hmm.
right? I think especially when, you're on a professional team or something like that, and you've got certain players who might have their habits, and, the hardest thing could be sometimes to build that trust with a player, to where you can help them with maybe certain bad habits that they have, right? So that's a learning curve and things that you have to get through to get to a point in which you can actually provide value for that player, right? Whereas with a player who's just kind of coming to you completely raw, where you can just mold them and if they're passionate, it's brilliant because you really get a chance to like see the progression in real time, from the start. And so, yeah, I think it's hard to answer that question because, when I was working with the youth last year, I was always saying, oh man, I missed the high level, man, because there were certain things that would just frustrate me because I'm like, how do you
Yeah.
not understand that? Right. But then on the other side, um, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed working with the kids because you see just a pure love for the game and something that, in that role, you're more like a mentor as well. You're guiding, you're helping them see things that's kind of bigger than basketball as well, which is valuable to me as a person. And I think, you just gain different things from it. And so I think I became a better person, a more patient person, a more understanding person, um, working with the kids.
Hmm.
Um, but with the pros, right, that's where you get challenged, right? And that's where you know you manage to you gain insights into managing high pressure situations, and especially when games are on the line, jobs are on the line, deadlines, all that sort of stuff, right? Things that come with coaching at the highest level, the environments, the dynamics of the other coaches, having to understand, what part you play in the coaching staff, all this sort of things that you have to think about when you're in a professional environment, right? This is a completely different realm, right? And so it's very different, and I gained a lot from each and every aspect of it. And so I'm very grateful that I've had that chance to just you know, serve in a kind of plethora of environments in that level in basketball.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned that you have worked with youth athletes, like young athletes, and no, stalking a little bit on what you have done. I saw about the UK 50, right?
Mhm.
And we have talked about this a little bit in the past. Would you like to share why you started that? What's the purpose? What's, the vision that you have with this program?
Yeah. It's funny actually, just before I got on this podcast, I saw a bit of an excerpt of an interview of Garba Hosa, one of the heads of at FIBA, and he
Mhm.
talked about, the NBA, Europe, and that project, and obviously how the UK market is going to be a big factor in that. And but there's a lot of things that need to be sorted out in the UK, and ultimately, calling out to the UK to say, look, you guys sort your stuff out over there, the politics, the things that's going on, and we will help provide a task force to kind of bring you guys to that next level. And it's one of those things. So I actually, I was coaching in China for 3 years during COVID, 2019, 2020 season through to the
See the
21, 22 season. Yeah. Fitting, very fitting.
plan.
And, I'd been outside of the UK for many years. Obviously, I lived away for a long time. Once I left as an under 18 player after my under 18 year, played for the national team, and then got a scholarship to the States. Did like an academy in between that. and just spent a lot of time outside, right? And so even though I'd kind of come back every now and then to like just get a bit of a lay of the land to see what's going on, I didn't really know what was truly going on in the UK. And so, once I got back from China and worked with the London Lions, as an assistant coach, even then I didn't really see what was going on because I was so focused on my job, right? And once I left the team, I kind of said to myself, look, I'm going to dedicate some time to really understand like what's going on in the UK, right? And I was thinking about going overseas again, taking another job. But then I went to a kind of a summer showcase and just to see what the talent was. I was working out with some players at the same kind of court arena. Some national team players. Temi Fagbele was one of them, my friend, who's currently with the Valkyries, the new expansion WNBA team. And I got a chance to just watch a game, and I'm like, wow, there's some talent. Like there's some young talent, but I'm like, they're so raw though. They're just so raw. And I felt like, yeah, just seeing it, just understanding it over the years. Obviously, Luol Deng was a client of mine at one point when he was playing, and he was doing his Deng Top 50, which is basically like, ranking the top 50 kids at under 19s level. And it was always just like everyone just loved being a part of it, right? And so I kind of had some thoughts, and I just wanted to get a lay of the land first. So I got involved in some projects with the national, governing body, the Basketball England, and got to see some of the talent over the year. And you know, through that, I was like, wow, like I actually coached a team as well. And I just realized that there's such a gap. There's so much potential still, but there's again a gap of just there's something missing in what we're providing the players, the coaches, and from someone from England who has had a chance to see the game at the next level in other countries and other environments. It's something that's just helped me so much understand like what it is that actually, is going to help players get to the next level, right? And I think it's just as an experience thing, right? I think a lot of coaches in the UK, we don't get a chance to see the game at the next level, right? Well, we have the London Lions, of course, but we don't have EuroLeague teams or Euro Cup teams in in our country, right? It's not like the professional league is something that, I think it's a good standard, decent standard, but it's not very popular, right? So people don't see the game at the high level. There's not a lot of access. We don't have EuroLeague playing on our TV. So it's just about that, really. Gaining access, gaining understanding of the level and the mindset that you need to have as a player to really work on your talent and get your skills and your understanding of the game to a point where you can translate that in any high level environment or country.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of the premise behind it. So, mindset, helping to scout players and give players an opportunity through, just understanding what are the intangibles, what are the things that we see in a player from a young age, even though they're raw, but they have potential, right? So we want to bring them to our program, give them some understanding of how to work, give them the methods of which to work, and then give them a platform, an environment where they could play against other top players, right? There's so many teams in England, and it's been kind of spread out in that sense. So now the talent's spread. So you might have a league of two good teams, right? That might have one good player on each team. So they're not getting pushed in practice.
Yeah.
So now how do we create an environment where all the best players are together and they get to compete against each other? They get to build camaraderie, they get to build that understanding of, oh, okay, like, this is what it is, right? I'm comfortable on my team. I'm not getting pushed on my team. So I'm here now. If I don't play well, if I don't get pushed, if I don't push myself, I'm going to be exposed, right? So that's about creating that. And then finally about the exposure side of things, right? Giving players a chance to compete, be exposed at the next level as well, have people come and watch them, scout them, the national team, etc. You know, um, and ultimately just kind of give the federation a bit of a nudge to say, look, we're here to help. We want to push the game forward like everybody does, and we want to do it without an ego as much as possible. Obviously, it's important to have an ego, but it's important to control it, I think, and be able to kind of be humble enough to sit back, but also have an ego enough to say, look, we can do this and we can help you, and let us be that that platform that's gonna help bring the game forward in the UK.
That's an amazing initiative because, we have, let's say, it's also how the people, like people in EuroLeague or like in FIBA, they call like London could be a metropolitan city of basketball. But, we saw London Lions doing something in a 2022, 2023 with EuroCup. Now they're not there anymore. But I'm sure,
Mm.
I mean, UK is a huge place. Obviously, there's a lot of talent, a lot of potential talent that could play abroad, could be something great. So to have something like this, like the program you just explained, I think it's amazing for them to be exposed, to work harder, and to get something
Yeah.
out of basketball. So I think that's amazing.
I
Um,
think I think just to add to that, sorry to cut you off, is that ultimately it's about being open-minded enough to see what other people are doing and try to take positive things from it, you know? I think as a country we get comfortable in just doing what we know, what we think is the best thing, but we don't like getting challenged, right? We kind of go into our little defensive bubble when we get challenged rather than open up and say, oh, you know what? Like, let me hear what you have to say. Let me maybe implement some things. Let me be positive to what we can do, right? I heard somebody in that space say something like, we only have coaches only have a certain amount of time a week to train their team, so therefore, how can they improve their team?
yeah.
With that mindset, you can't really do anything, right? So it's like there are limitations, obviously. We don't have the facilities, we don't have a lot of things that other countries might have. So there are definitely limitations, but I think it's important to think about what we can do and then
Mm,
how we can build with, what we actually can control, right?
yeah. And I think it's also a great, let's say, program, not only UK 50, but other similar programs that are happening in Europe to kind of keep the young athletes to stay in their hometowns and their like home countries. Because, we see now that like young athletes have many reasons to just go to the States, just leave, never come back, just play in college. So I think that,
Mhm.
to get experiences like this, but to also be exposed and get maybe a professional contract in Europe in a club that they have potential to play professionally later, I think
Yeah.
it's amazing. Um,
Yeah, I think it's just we just want to create a platform and a foundation of something that, hey, look, we can't really control too much about what, the federation does or decides to do in the end. We can't do too much about what the, professional league does. Obviously, London Lions have been bought by the new group who own Kaunas, and they're doing great stuff, I've heard. And, ultimately, they're going back into the Euro Cup with aspirations to get to EuroLeague, which is great.
mhm,
And, hopefully other teams follow suit. The NBA Europe potentially coming to London and Manchester. So it's like we just want to build something that's that, look, we've got players, we've got something, that once academies start to form or, like we can help push them in certain directions that's going to be helpful for the players and also helpful for the country,
mhm.
right? Like something to be excited about and be collaborative.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So now you're in China, right?
Mhm.
What's the name of the place that you are?
I'm in Xinjiang,
Okay.
Xij or Xinjing. So it's in the west of China. It's my fourth season in the CBA. I'm now an assistant coach. I was player development coach before on Shanghai Sharks and Liaoning. Spent a small stint on Guangzhou team as well. But yeah, it's a different environment, very different to Shanghai.
Mhm.
But it's great in the sense that, it's not so metropolitan. It's a place I can just focus on my craft and, help the team get better.
Great. Um, well, do you have any question for me before we finish this episode?
Yeah, I mean, you're everywhere. You're doing everything. You're like a woman of all kind of expertise, right? I know you're working with Puma, you're working in Germany with Bamberg. You do some coaching. Now you're in the NBA. You do some stuff with EuroLeague. Like, you know, like I guess what is your end goal, or do you have one in that sense, or is it like you just want to help push the game because you're just someone who loves the game so much? Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to give the people an understanding of that as well, because I'm sure you always get lots of curious questions.
I do. I actually do. Well, I also explained kind of this in the previous video on how I was an athlete, but that was not meant for me. I was not meant to be a professional athlete. I was not meant to be an athlete. So after that, I just realized that there's so much you can do in sports if you're not an athlete. And I knew from being a kid that I was creative. I always liked to do, like I was painting, I was doing like I was building stuff with my grandpa, I was doing this and that. So when I started to understand how creative you can be in sports, this is how and what changed completely my mindset on the things that I can do. And this also applies on the content, but also on the marketing side when I worked for some sports companies before. Um, However, being a coach, being a player, doing content and doing events, I think, people also take me more seriously when I talk because I'm a like female working in sports, which is something that it's not easy. You don't get a lot of trust easily. It's not an easy world to be at, for sure. And I'm in a room and I say I did this and this and this and that, I can feel that, people start to actually listen to me, pay attention to what I'm saying, and they understand that I know what I'm talking about. Um, However, this was not a very easy journey, obviously. Um, I didn't study sports management. I didn't come from a family that, they worked exactly in this field. Like my dad is a coach, but he was never involved in anything else than that. So this is a journey I created by just being creative and just waking up every day and thinking that there is nothing like you cannot do. Like I was sleeping and I had dreams of doing this and that. I was waking up and I was trying to find ways to do it.
Mhm.
So this is also the end point of why I decided to do this show, because I feel like there are many people that also have very diverse stories, very diverse environments they're coming from, and like ways of getting where they are now. And I think they're all amazing, and I love to hear them. And, we all give value to what sport is now. So I'm really
Yeah.
grateful for that.
I could really attach to that because there's not many people who know this actually, but once I graduated college, so I said I had a basketball scholarship in the States. And once I graduated, I moved to New York and worked in hospitality. And so I didn't go straight into basketball.
Hmm.
I actually worked in a different field, which gave me a different perspective. And it just so happened that, um, I met lots of people through that. And that's the power of the networking and having that ability to just interact and be social, which is extremely important in this industry, right?
Hmm.
And you know, it was only like 3 years later when I decided to kind of get back into basketball and started doing some coaching here and there on the side with some kids and um, decided to go and utilize the contacts that I'd had, which was Chris Johnson, which was Phil, and spend some time with them, while they were doing their training sessions in LA. I had different mindset of what I wanted to do at the time, and I just kind of fell in love with the skills development, and it just grew from there, right? Where I didn't have a plan of what I wanted to do, but in doing it and in being involved in it and finding the passion and the love for it, I managed to just grow from there. So yeah, definitely a big advocate of that, of kind of just going with what your passions are and, trying a bit of everything, and eventually you kind of narrow it down.
We'll see.
We'll see, right? Might still do everything. Who knows?
Well, thank
Yeah,
you so much, Daniel, for being here. I know
thanks
that
for
your
having me.
story is going to inspire a lot of young athletes, young professionals, but also other professionals that want to be where you are now. So thank you for sharing your story.
And thank you for having me. Like I said, appreciate that.